City Council. We appreciate everyone in the audience tonight. Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Bettine?
Here.
Councilor Brookie?
Here.
Councilor White?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef?
Here.
Mayor Marbury?
Here. We are moving right into a review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a councilor, requests an item to be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item number 6. Ms. Phillips?
Item 4.1 is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting, February 5th, 2019. Items 4.2 through 4.7 are discussion and possible action items. 4.2 concerns the Mountain Trace Townhomes Building L, final as-built plat. 4.3 concerns Resolution R 2019-9, authorizing additional appropriation to the Sustainable Services Fund for a Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, RREO grant to expand recycling in Durango. 4.4 concerns Resolution R 2019-10, authorizing an additional appropriations to various funds for the 2018 purchasing and contractual commitments. 4.5 concerns the appointments of boards and commission members for 2019. 4.6 concerns Resolution R 2019-11, authorizing additional appropriation to the Airport Capital Improvements Fund for a terminal improvement capital project cost in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2019 budget. 4.7 concerns Resolution R 2019-12, authorizing additional appropriation to the Airport Capital Improvements Fund for the airfield lighting generator installation project cost, in excess of the amounts budgeted in the 2019 budget. And 4.8 is final approval of Ordinance O 2019-6, amending Chapter 27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango, the Land Use and Development Code, by the amendment and addition of portions of tables and sections of 2-3-2-3, 3-1-2-3, 3-1-2-4, and 3-1-5-1 to allow for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and amending design standards in the EN4, EN5, and EN6 zones and declaring an effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Would any councilor like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
And Mayor Marbury?
Yes. I would like to remind anyone who came in a little late, if you would like to talk to City Council about a specific item that's on the agenda, there are sign-in sheets right there on the table. Please sign in. And we are moving on to public participation, but no one has signed up. So I'm going to move right into 8.1.1, a public hearing to consider land use and development code text amendments to update the sign code. And I'll begin with staff, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Scott Shine with Community Development, and we are very pleased to be able to present to you tonight about a proposed sign code update. It's a significant portion of our land use and development code, and we've been working on it for about 9 months now with the help of some outside legal assistance, some other consultants that have done sign codes in other communities, and DOLA also supported this effort with some matching grant money. And so it's been a big concerted effort. We're excited to get it before you for consideration tonight. I'm going to start with a little bit about the overall purpose of a sign code, some of the different sort of competing or demands that communities have on sign codes. And then Colleen O'Brien is going to talk more about the overall structure and content of the code. So this is out of the first paragraph in the proposed sign code about the purposes and the intent of the sign code. And as you can see, one of the overall objectives we're trying to achieve is promoting visual harmony and respecting and preserving the unique character of the community. And I don't know if you can recognize that picture of Main Avenue in the late 70s, early 80s there, but you can see that the sign code that's been in place now for decades has had a significant impact on what does the community feel like, what does it look like, and especially in downtown, there used to be different standards for signage. Now, the signs have come down in size and scale, colors are different. You can see those big highway-style lights are down, and we have a lot more street trees, no more pennants over the street, and that has nurtured and developed a different character in downtown. And so now we're trying to look at how do we address new demands for signage, legal demands that are being put on us through a recent Supreme Court ruling, while also preserving that, what I like to refer as standing on the shoulders of giants. With what the sign code has accomplished already has made it a great place to be. Downtown's recognized often as a great destination and a really unique place to visit. And so we feel a big burden to try and preserve that and enhance that character, and signs are really a big part of that. So that's one overall objective. And then later in that same sentence, in the introduction to the sign code, it says, while also enhancing the economy, businesses, and industries by encouraging efficient communication with the public. So you can see there those things, trying to balance those different interests and demands is a challenge. And in a lot of communities that I've been in and worked in, sign codes are a difficult process of balancing those different demands. But I think the draft we have for you tonight is about 99% there. We've gotten great feedback from the community through this public process that we've held. A lot of consensus around types of signs we want to allow, design standards that have been in place. We want to preserve those things to make sure signage fits in with the character of the community that we're trying to create and preserve. So as you'll recall from early on and starting the process, and then we had a joint study session with council, members of the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. The driving force behind this update is a recent Supreme Court decision that required sign codes to be content neutral, and that's related to the First Amendment. As a court case out of Arizona, the town of Gilbert, Arizona, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and there was a decision upholding Reed in that case, requiring sign codes to address signage not based on their content, so not based on the message of that sign, again, related to the First Amendment. In our existing sign code, we have language that talks about political signs, real estate signs, grand opening signs. All those things are based on the content of the sign. So we had to step back and say we need to take out those types of references to content. And now what you'll see in the draft is it's really related to the type of sign and the material and sort of the design of the sign instead of the content. It's not related to the speech on that sign. So that was really the overarching push for this sign code update. So we started into the process, and as we were talking to the community and asked them about their experience with the sign code, these other two goals came up that, well, we'd like it to be more clear. Staff would agree with that. We'd like it to be understandable, easy to administer, and we think we've accomplished that. We've reduced just the overall volume of standards in there, and we've consolidated sections to make it easier to navigate. And the community and sign companies and business owners also said they would like a little more flexibility in adapting signage to the unique sites that we have in the community. So we have a lot of topography. We have North Main that's different than downtown. We have Highway 160 that's different than Grandview. All these things, we realize there's a need to be flexible in administering this code. In the past, all variances would have to go to the Design Review Board for approval. One of the most substantial changes that we're proposing is there is a staff review for what we call alternative compliance. That's really came out of that feedback we heard from the community about increased flexibility and looking at ways to tailor signage solutions to the site. So with that sort of overall sort of framework and understanding of the goals of this process, I'll let Colleen talk some more about the structure and the content. Thank you.
So first I want to go over the process that we've been through. Like Scott said, it's been about a 9-month process. First thing we did was retain some professionals with expertise in the legal aspects and people who have experience drafting sign codes in other communities. So these 2 consultants have helped us throughout the process. Then in April, we started doing our public outreach, and this is where we came up with those 2 additional goals of usability and clarity and increased flexibility. We first held a general public meeting where anyone was welcome, and then on April 26th, the day after, we did really specific stakeholder meetings. We did 3 different meetings where we invited sign companies, economic development groups, designers, planning commission members, design review board members, so we could get a variety of perspectives and have an in-depth conversation about some of the main issues in our sign code, and we got a lot from those stakeholder sessions. After taking back all that feedback, we worked with the consultants to prepare a draft code. This was released in October, and then we held a public meeting to go over a lot of the changes that came out from our public process and that were present in the new draft. We received a lot of comments on that initial draft, and we presented those comments along with the sign code to the Planning Commission, City Council, and Design Review Board during a joint study session in December, and received even more feedback and guidance from these 3 groups. We incorporated those guidance and came up with the draft that you have before you today. We brought that through to Planning Commission in late January, and they recommended approval of the draft. So first I want to go over the general format and some of the key changes in the different sections. And we'll do this through the lens of what our 3 goals were, which were content neutrality, usability, and flexibility. You'll see most of the changes in divisions 2 through 5, and so I'll go over these individually. Division 2 is about administration and procedures, and this talks a lot about to what Scott was mentioning about alternative compliance. There are a lot of unique lots and properties in town, and so this gives staff the ability to make some reasonable adjustments based on those unique circumstances. And it creates a lot smoother of a process for the applicant. And of course, the applicant will always have the right to go to Design Review Board if they're not happy with staff's decision and they want a third party. The second section is general sign requirements. Here we just updated some of the sections, including signs authorized without a permit. One major change is murals now can be approved by staff. Before, those also had to go to Design Review Board, which created a bit of a cumbersome process. So we're happy to have that adjusted. And then Councillor White had a question about the section as well about vehicle signs. We are recommending to the current version adding some clarification to the vehicle signs that are allowed. And that is to clarify that signs may only be temporarily attached to vehicles on the exterior of the vehicle. And examples of this are signs on roofs, think of a Pizza Hut truck or car, or in the bed of a truck. But they can't be used for the primary purpose of a sign. And that's all in the code. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. The next section is permitted sign types. Here we really focused on clarity and usability. So before there's a lot of confusion about what exactly was a monument sign, what's the difference between an awning and a canopy sign. So we added graphics for all of these, and we think that will help a lot with making sure that the applicants and staff are on the same page when referring to these types of signs. And then we also did that for our temporary sign types. And as Scott alluded to earlier, there was a lot of changes in the temporary sign section because of the content neutrality aspect. So we can no longer say real estate signs are allowed for however long, and grand opening signs can be up for 2 weeks. Instead, we have to say it by the type of sign. We refer to those as banners or yard signs. And then we added graphics so it was clear what type of signs we were referring to. The final section with major changes is place-based sign standards. And as you can imagine, we have different standards for historic downtown than we do for Highway 160. Previously, we had 10 different zones with different standards, and we found this to be a little too much and not as helpful for the applicant. So we really went through there and tried to put like zones together, and we narrowed it down to 5 different zones with different standards. And then for each of those zones, we created one of these easy-to-use charts. The idea with this is if I'm a business owner, for example, in the commercial general zone, I can just grab this chart and really look at all of my options. Included in this is permit requirements, maximum number of signs allowed, area requirements, height, setbacks. You can find all of this in this chart, and it should make it really easy for the business or organization to find the right mix of signs for their property. And so we think this will really help with the usability and clarity. And so that's the general overview of the structure of the new sign code. There's not a significant amount of changes to the actual standards, but just making it more usable, clear, and then adjusting some of the processes and procedures. Are there any questions or comments about those sections at this point? So throughout the process, we had a few key issues come to the top, and we received a lot of comments and feedback on these issues, and they all related to temporary signs. The first one is small portable signs. Based on our outreach and the feedback we received, the community's been very split on this. We've heard some businesses saying these signs are imperative to their success, and we've had other businesses tell us that they thought they were taken away from downtown. And we received this feedback, this split type of perspectives from a lot of different groups and individuals. So we're trying to once again strike that balance. Initially, we were looking for a way to permit the small portable signs or sandwich board signs and allow them on public right-of-way. Based on feedback and discussion during the joint City Council Planning Commission Design Review Board session, we just thought that it might be in conflict with the sidewalk safety ordinance and have removed the ability to guidance on having them in the public right-of-way. But that does mean that they're still allowed on private property, which is the change from before. Before, on private property, you had to have it included as part of your sign program, and you had to get a permit for it. Now it's allowed on private property without a permit, which should make it easier for businesses who have that ability. And then we have some standards that go along with it. So what that means exactly is if you're downtown, you can put these signs in your alcoves. For the businesses that have that space, some businesses actually have some frontage right in front of their business. Think of Dancing Willow Herbs. They have that area where they're able to put displays or signage. And then also if you have parking or other space that's on private property, you're allowed to have signs there. So it does allow, so the new code does allow for more small portable signs than the previous one did. The second key issue was banners. Based on public feedback, we made a few changes from the draft code. Initially, we were allowing 32 square feet throughout the community, and based on feedback, we've reduced that to 16 square feet, allowed in downtown, MUN neighborhood areas, and multi-use arterial zones. And so that's supposed to be more in line with the character of the area, because a lot of the users in that area are pedestrians. We thought the smaller signs were more appropriate for our banner sizes. And then the length of display is increased from the previous code. Prior, it was 7 days per month. We've increased that to 14 days per month. Since the last draft was released, we have received comments on that. But this is what we came out with through the public process. And since we have reduced the size of banners allowed everywhere, we thought the increase in length was appropriate. And then one other major change is there's no teardrop banners allowed downtown, and the initial draft allowed for those. So I wanted to update you on those changes for banners. And then the final key issue was yard signs. Based on feedback during the study session, we've made some adjustments to that to add for some more flexibility. First, we removed any setback requirements in residential zones. And then the second thing we did, there was concerns about allowing yard signs during political season and not restricting citizens' ability to support candidates and issues that were important to them. After discussion with the city attorney and our legal consultant, we came up with a way to address this and still remain content neutral. And what we're proposing is increasing the allowed square footage of yard signs 30 days prior to an election. And so what we're proposing is that 30 days prior to election, you can have up to 48 square feet of yard signs, and that equates to about 8 political signs. And then year-round, you'd be allowed up to 12 square feet of yard signs, and that's about 2 political signs. And so that was our way to still stay content neutral, yet allow more flexibility during political season. And so as the sign code is a text amendment, we have to make sure that it is compliant with the LUDC criteria. And that includes making sure the proposed amendment supports plans and policies, it's in alignment with the LUDC, it furthers the health, safety, and general welfare of the community, and provides benefits to the community. And staff finds that the proposed text amendments meet those criteria, and Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval as well. And finally, staff's recommended motion is to move to approve the proposed sign code amendments with the findings and conditions as outlined in the staff report and discussed during this public hearing. That's what I have for you today. Any questions for staff?
We'll save our questions for a little bit later.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public testimony.
Just a reminder, if you're here to talk about the sign code, I would like you to sign in down right here, or the city manager. If you haven't had a chance to sign in, this is your chance to talk to city council about the sign code. So here, I see one more gentleman coming, Mr. LeBlanc. Who'd like to sign in? There you go. I'm going to read you the ground rules for tonight for the public testimony. A witness, please state your name and address for the record, and you're limited to 3 minutes. The city manager will raise his hand when you have about 30 seconds to wrap it up, and city council members will refrain from asking you any questions or commenting during public testimony. Please speak to the city council, not to the audience. We appreciate everyone who's taken their personal time to come to city council tonight. With that, I'm going to open the public testimony. Thank you, sir. Okay. The first gentleman is Earl. Thank you. Go right to the podium over there, Mr. Colcall.
Thanks.
And state your name and address, please.
My name's Earl Colclaw, and I live at 175 Metz Lane, Durango 81301. I'm the owner and operator of the Fallen Angel. We're actually in a basement area downtown Durango, off of 8th Street. So we have no alcove. We don't have anywhere to put a sandwich board or a A-frame temporary sign anywhere that's not like a, considered a right-of-way. So this is very concerning to us, and I'm sure other people that don't have alcoves or are set away from the main avenue where most all foot traffic travels. So we wanted to qualify according to these type of rules, allowing us to entice traffic from either north or south, on the street, or foot traffic to bring them towards us. Let alone we're actually about 11 steps down from the sidewalk, so it's very difficult for anyone to see us. 9 times out of 10, when we have a non-local step foot in our store, we like to ask them how they found out about us, and they always say, I saw a sign at the corner, thought it was unique, came down. I believe, unfortunately it's not like hard facts, but a lot of the tourists support our store and the income that we bring in to, our myself and our employees and the city. And I believe that we would probably lose $200 to $400 a day. That would equate to, other than the 4 days that were closed a year, around $72,000 to $144,000 annually. That could really make or break us. So seeing that we don't qualify for one of these type signs, it's very concerning to myself, our manager, and our other employees, as we would have to adjust or move. So anyone in that situation that doesn't have an alcove, doesn't have ability to put it in a parking lot, is just out of luck, according to this new sign code. So that's why I'm here. I just would like to see if there was some sort of solution, whether it's we pay some form of insurance, or that there's a permit for particular
You have 30 seconds.
type of stores that don't have those abilities to still be able to promote and allow the city and ourselves to still gain those sales from the enticement of the sign. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Rod Barker.
My name is Rod Barker, and I live at 7 Carroll Drive, Durango. And I am been here a long time. I've seen a lot of the pictures that you started off with when I was a little kid. That's the way it looked. And so we've come a long ways. I think it's much, much better today. But I do echo some of the thoughts that there are a plural different type of needs for signs. If you're a restaurant, for instance, with an alcove and you had a sign in there, it will bring a lot of people in based on that sign. The Strader does not have an alcove in any part of its many facets of operations. So it would eliminate the sign codes the street signs for us across the board. And they're very valuable for us. I know that most people that have them wouldn't have them out there if they didn't produce something pretty good. So it concerns me that while I have the other side of the viewpoint on signs, they should look nice, they should be well maintained and tailored, but I do think that there's a place for them. And if it's just only in the ones with alcoves, that kind of is a lopsided sort of a business proposition for the diversity of restaurants that we have across here. So I think that should be looked at with some depth. To allow for that, I think there are ways that they maybe should be fastened. I like the idea of the insurance. Perhaps if there's a liability, that could be insured. But I think that's important for us to look at deeper. Additionally, I don't know if this new sign code with the changes mean that the signs that are consistently there right now, if they don't adhere to the sign code, do they need to be removed? That wasn't clear to me. So maybe that's something that we could delve into. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike Hurst.
Hi, my name's Mike Hurst. I live at 170 Rockridge Drive in Durango. Also co-owner of Carver Brewing Company. You may have heard from my partner Bill Carver via email. He's been fairly active on this and he couldn't be here tonight, so I wanted to speak on his behalf and on the behalf of my other partners. It's worth noting we were the first sidewalk approved bistro permit in Durango, and when I first presented the easement idea to City Council, that signage was included in our idea. It was permitted to extend 48 inches from the building. At the time, we did have an alcove, but with the approval of this signage and this easement, we went ahead and Jim Carver built this beautiful sandwich board by hand. The thing is robust. You all see it Thursday mornings before your meeting, I'm sure. And it was quite a process to go through the permitting. We pay $300 a year for our bistro permit. And we also have a possessory interest property tax for the sidewalk area. There is a 6-foot unobstructed sidewalk right away as part of the bistro table guidelines. And that should satisfy the city's interest in minimizing sidewalk hazards and blockages. We also, on a more general note, would like to see that small portable signs be regulated rather than disallowed on the public right-of-way within the central business district. As you've heard already, the menu boards and other easel-type signs are an effective way to display daily food specials, add an interesting element to the streetscape, and gives artisan businesses downtown a chance to show passerbys what they do that changes on a daily basis. Perhaps limiting allowed placement, i.e. within 48 inches of the storefront, instituting quality standards, and requiring a permit would be enough to keep clutter at bay. We've already heard one business owner advocate for a permitting process. The other thing that does is it gives shop owners a sense of ownership of their storefront, which I think is really important that as we struggle with issues like panhandling and loitering, we have shop owners that are active out front, that they're sweeping, that they're taking pride in showing off the front of their restaurant. So I'd finally like to point out the 2 slides at the beginning of the sign code update showed a different Durango in the mid-'80s when my partners opened Carver Brewing. They talk about the vacant storefronts, and I guess I would just ask that you consider ways to support our downtown business owners rather than being more restrictive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie Burford?
Hi, I'm Katie Burford, 1021 Main Avenue, with Cream Mean Berry ice cream. And mostly I just want to reiterate what most of the folks here have said. I do have an alcove that would, I guess, allow me to display the sandwich board that I use to post our daily flavors. It wouldn't be as visible because it's recessed, and that would be a real detriment. At least it would be something, unlike other business owners, which wouldn't have any possibility. But I just, I guess the 2 points I would make is that there just isn't anything that's equitable as far as communicating to the passing public what is available at that point in time, to have that flexibility, because my flavors change hourly sometimes in the summer, and it makes a huge difference. Like if we don't get it changed right away and people walk in the store and there isn't the flavor that I saw on the board, they get angry. And so I know how much people are paying attention to it, and we even take a picture of it every day and post it on our website. So I think that there isn't an alternative that's as good, and because they're so effective, I feel like any rule that would ban them would have to have an equally important and demonstrable effect, because it's hard to make it as a business owner on Main. There's 6 spot businesses that were there when I started that are gone, and that's sales tax revenue that the city doesn't get. And so I just think that, like, when we're saying that this is important and effective, I really think that if you're going to tell us no, we can't use it, that there has to be a really good and demonstrable way to alternative against it. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Katie. James McNichol?
Hi, everybody. I would like to start by saying thank you all for being here, and talk about who I am. My name is James McNichol. I am a device repair technician at a business that I opened called Technical Device Repair. And I'm here to represent those who do have signs and to put my opinion out there. So living in Durango for about the last 16 years, what I've observed is that Durango is very much a tourist town. I believe the population here increases by 2/3, and that 1/3 is the actual population that lives here during the tourist times or the tourist seasons. And with that, we have to adapt to captivate our audience. And for me, the way that I've been doing it has been using a sign, which when people pass by where I'm located, I have a mere amount of seconds to tell them who I am, what I do, and where I'm located. So having one of those signs is very important to my business, as well as within 50 feet of my location, there are 2 other competitors who do exactly what I do, and the competition is very, very fierce. So those being just the key points of it, I am here to say just that. And this is a very short one. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McNichol, could you give us your address and where your business is?
736 Main Avenue. And what was that other question you asked?
Your home address. Your business address, probably. Some people have given
yes,
home addresses.
736 Main Avenue, right next to Durango Coffee Roasters. Thank you.
Thank you. David Moeller.
My name is David Moeller, live at 72 Trestle Lane, Durango. I own Durango River Trippers and Adventure Tours. I brought some props with me. So I brought my sandwich board with me because I just wanted you guys to kind of get to see what that looks like. Also, I brought my wife's little DIY project, one of the tables or chairs that she put together. But ideally, what I wanted to kind of make a connection about is, first off, I recognize that sandwich boards haven't been allowed in the sign code, and that this was an opportunity potentially to get them permitted or legal. And so I was really excited when I found that that was an opportunity for us. And thank you, staff, for collecting all of my comments anyway and forwarding them on. And so during this time, I've always kind of made the connection between sandwich boards and sidewalk safety and bistro tables as kind of essentially one conversation. And so I understand that there was some traction with the sandwich board conversation happening until it was brought up that maybe there was a clash between sidewalk safety and sandwich boards. And whether or not that was exact or not, but I just wanted to say that I don't think that that is a fair assessment to sidewalk safety. For example, if I applied for and got a bistro table permit, that would be the size chair, essentially, that would be allowed in the public. I don't want to say right away because it says in here it can't.
You know what, I'm going to stop you just for a second. Could staff go get those, the chair and the sign so that
we can all see it?
So that everyone, and bring it
Kelly,
right.
give them a hand with that, Kelly. So that you can see how
we need
it
a
folds out.
Vanna,
Thank you.
so that everyone
Kelly,
can see it.
as well. Not that you couldn't lift my sandwich board, but I do want to identify that the sandwich board is quite heavy. We had that built locally. It was about $750 to have done. And there's a little attachment that Kelly will do that actually stops it from collapsing when the wind blows and falling over. So when the wind gusts in the afternoons with the thermals, we don't have to worry about that thing falling over. It just kind of shakes and moves around. But I know I'm limited on time, so I just want to read for you the permit process for the bistro tables. And its intent of a program is to provide the added vitality to the downtown experience and provide the establishment opportunity to enhance sales. Along with that bistro option, there are 15 stipulations that I would have to go through in order to get a bistro table that I feel would transfer into the same process of being able to permit that sandwich board. Number one, and I'm not going to read all 15 of these, but I'm just going to read a few highlights. The bistro table must allow for a minimum of 4 feet for pedestrian use. So that's coming directly from the 2019 bistro permit application. And then it says, of course, what applies to the sign. Long story short, it basically says that that there's no, the applicant will assume all liability or loss of any kind arise from the permitted use of the public right-of-way for a bistro table. changed the name to sandwich board, and I think we already have the legal, verbiage written as how we can permit these. I mean, there's about 22 sandwich boards on Main Street at any given moment, both upstairs businesses that have the sides. I'm fortunate, I have somewhat of an alcove on to be able to utilize this signage, but I can tell you firsthand the way that, when you see people walk up and down, people are always on their phones or either looking down or off to the side. That creates more of a trip hazard in the way of sidewalk safety than that does. And I just wanted to kind of share with you, council, for kind of that visual presentation. If you run into that, you really had to have been way off. If you run into that, I've seen dogs on the current bistro tables. They'll be running around on the leash and they get caught up in there and chairs are going everywhere. It's never happened with our sandwich board. Council, thank you for your time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kelly Monroe. Kelly Monroe. Change your mind? Okay. Let's see, and Mr. McNichol had already spoken, and I believe that's going to conclude. Would you like to?
Yeah, because it was already addressed with the show.
Oh, okay.
It's on the list.
James McNichol. All right, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on the sandwich boards? All right, then. I'm not going to close public testimony at this moment in time. I'm going to allow for questions by council.
Could I offer a process suggestion?
Yes,
I think what staff has presented with the sign code could be addressed tonight. And then perhaps the council would like to continue the decision and discussion on the tent signs so that we can meet with some of the people that have offered testimony tonight and some others who probably couldn't, and maybe work out a compromise. So that would come back to the council. And I think Mr. Moeller did a good listening job on the staff report, as he always does. Because right now those signs are not in the sign code, and we could come up with some language that we could offer the council for their consideration to incorporate at a later time. And I think we could be bringing that back to council around the 19th of March, if my calendar is correct.
And that would have input from everyone who testified tonight. That would be looking at a compromise.
Correct.
All right, and I think that's me personally, I think that's a very smart way to go in looking at compromises. I have been in favor of sandwich boards. I've been here about 45 years and certainly have seen what Mr. Barker saw in the early 70s in terms of the improvements of our sign code. But I also believe that local businesses thrive. We have a stiff competition, as I think another gentleman pointed out, with our restaurants and even our fixing a device. And so I have always been a supporter of local businesses. And I recognize that this sandwich board is, it needs some work. I don't support that, not allowing them. And I know there's been some discussion about public safety. So I appreciate you, Mr. Mueller, bringing your sandwich board and your bistro chair. So City Council, we can adopt the rest of the sign code and pull out, and I'd have to look up the exact section. Is there a section number? Would you come back, Mr. Shine, and help us out here, please? We'll have to get information from City Council if they are willing to look at a compromise to help our downtown businesses.
The city manager's summary was spot on, that as presented, you can adopt the sign code, and that doesn't immediately restrict A-frames from being in the right-of-way or change anything from the current situation.
Okay.
So that you can adopt it, we can start implementing, notifying our customers of those other changes regarding permanent signs and other temporary signs. And then if you give us some time to hold a meeting, have that discussion, then we can bring back a proposal specific to A-frames in the public right-of-way. Because like I said, I think 99.9% of the sign code is is ready to go. We've had a very solid and in-depth process, and we'll sort of take that next step and go in more detail on the A-frames and bring that back to you as soon as possible.
All right, so there's nothing that we can
No.
pull out at this moment in time,
No.
just to revisit the sandwich boards?
And give us that direction to have that meeting and then bring back a proposal.
Okay.
I'm a little puzzled because the draft of the code does have a specific provision about this kind of temporary sign.
Right.
Do we need then to omit that?
I don't think so, because it's talking about small portable signs on private property.
Oh,
So
okay,
those-
that's right.
We're still
So we
defining the
can always
class of
add,
sign.
we
Yes.
can always add.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. I'm looking for agreement to, I see heads nodding.
Just point of clarification, so we would, the motion would be to approve the sign code in its entirety, except for section 3-6-4-2?
No, because that deals with the private.
Private property is allowed.
So we don't have to remove that. We can just come back.
And you can
add
adopt it, and then with the direction to staff to bring back amendments that would address A-frames in the right of way.
Okay.
But in the meantime,
They're still allowed. They're still there.
They are still there outside of code.
Right.
Yes, they're still there, just like they've been for years. Just like they've been for years in the city of Durango.
so the root of this concern, if I might just talk about that for a second, is, I mean, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. There's, I would say, equal amount of emails and so forth on the opposite side as well, and for different reasons, for people that just don't like them, for their clutter, and I forget all the acronyms that they've used for that. I'm not so at all concerned about that. First, I would want to say that we enjoy your vitality, your place in the community, especially downtown, adding to all those, the vibrancy and the risk you take, and you know, those people that have Main Street properties versus those that are around, slightly around the corner or way up the corner. That's somehow reflected in your rent, and therefore, you know, those businesses on the side streets don't have as much income as those businesses on Main Street. I've been there, I understand that balance as well. The root of this is same community, including the bid, has been before us a number of times talking about whether it's panhandling, whether it's sit and lie. You know, this has been a 2-year-old, 3-year-old problem that we just months ago crafted, very carefully crafted, I might add, language in the form of the sit and lie ordinance, which we adopted. So my concern totally is not about the signs and what's on them, or how many times you change your green bean berry signs and so forth. I think that's important information. And, you know, if you got the Fallen Angel, I've been going down that steps ever since it was a fly fisherman shop, you know. There's been a number of places down there. And when they make enough money, they come out of the basement and do something else. But everybody has an opportunity to put a sign, a regular sign up in, you know, on the side streets, so you can put a perpendicular sign. So I don't think any of your business plans had a caveat that said, you know, my business will fail if I don't have a sandwich board sign, including Mr. McNichols is talking about his tech repair business, and he's got 2 other competitors that within 50 feet that have the same sign, you know. So, and Green Bean Berry is a great example. You've got an alcove, but as other people put up sandwich board signs, you need location, location, location. You know, it's a slippery slope of putting more and more sandwich board signs more prominent into the right of way. So that's, you know, that's the dilemma we're dealing with. And so if we were to pass this in its entirety this evening, and those opponents to the fact that we crafted this language for the sit and lie ordinance, which I think most downtown business people would agree is essential to the continuation of successful business in downtown. It was crafted with public safety as its sole, primarily its sole. I'm looking at the city attorney here. You know, it was about safety, about safety, about safety. So if you all of a sudden forget that component of what that totally different, separate legislation that we passed and worked very hard on, and replace it with sandwich boards, you can imagine what kind of position we're going to be in defending that sit and lie ordinance in the future. And that's what I don't want to have to do. And so that's why I think we need a lot more conversation about why we are looking at the big picture and why a sandwich board, as vital as it might be, and as you know, whether it makes you another $400 or $500 a month, that's important. How else can you make that same $400 or $500 a month without putting something, having the privilege to put something on the public right-of-way that brings in those customers? So let's look at the other signage options and have a little bit more discussion before we go whole hog into it. You know, those people with those older businesses that have alcoves, you know, they can use them. Those businesses that don't have alcoves, they've got the benefit of additional square footage on the interior of their space. So it's not, it's kind of a, you know, if you were designing that space new, would you indent your space just to have an option to place a sandwich board off the public right-of-way? Probably not, because you'd rather have that interior space, because that shows up on your appraisal as more value on Main Street, you know, kind of thing. So there's a lot of things go into this, and you know, do we need to start that slippery slope of location with sandwich boards up and down our Main Street? I too was here in 1980. That's when we started the Main Street National Main Streets program, and Rod remembers this too. We're knocking on doors, talking to merchants about how they can do a better job of signage, about marketing, about improving your storefront, take down that big thing, and you can get a lowest interest loan through the city of Durango, I might add, to take down that aluminum awning and do all the kinds of things that the Main Streets program supported at that time. And that's what caused the change, the big significant change in downtown Durango. It became a historic district, and so that's what I just don't want to throw out in the form of a revised sign code to allow this kind of slippery slope to reoccur. So with that, I would make a motion to.
I have questions. I have questions to answer. I think.
Oh, of course. Go ahead, Councilor.
I'm not sure if I can add anything to what Councilor Brookie said about the temporary signs in the central business district. It's a really challenging issue for it, and I think he's identified the reasons why. You know, the way I've put it to myself is, how is a sign different from a person occupying the same space? Mr. Mueller may have offered a change in that a person doesn't necessarily have a liability for occupying that space. A business might, whether that is a you know, an avenue for a compromise, I don't know, but I'd like it to be discussed. I did want to ask the city attorney his opinion, his legal opinion about how those things match up.
I think one big difference between people and signs is that people tend to move around more. I think that's one of the issues with the set line ordinance, is that people were sitting against the buildings, extending their legs into the right of way and so forth. So I think that there are some differences, and I think there are some other reasons the council reviewed to adopt the sit line ordinance. It wasn't 100% safety, but that was the primary issue. I think the primary issue here has to do with similar issues. The bistro tables are set up so that they are permanent. They are permitted. The insurance is required. It is a little bit of a different animal on a sign. I think it's possible that we might be able to find some compromises that allow for clearance on the sidewalk in ways that work. But I would concur that it's inconsistent to say that people can't sit on the sidewalk, but we allow other obstructions to exist. I think there's some inconsistency with that.
I was wondering if staff, when they look at this process and step back to see if they can find a compromise, if you could look at the very nature of our streets in particular and areas of our streets that are potentially wider through this permitting process, and identify areas that might have more than 4 feet, more 5 or 6 feet, such that they could, we could consider signs in those areas that might have wider portions of the sidewalk and less obstructions with biking, with bike racks and garbage cans and things like that. Recognizing the need for safety, the need to, continue to recognize that importance. But one of the things that I was thinking of is I think we did a really good job with our vacation rentals, recognizing the advantages of vacation rentals for homeowners and for people who own it. But what did we do? We put a limit on it because we didn't want it to take over certain areas of our town. And so I think that was a really nice compromise. I kind of am looking at this as possibly something where we might want to limit the number of signs per block through a permitting process, but still allow it. And maybe, I don't know how we figure out who has priority for those limited signs, but I think maybe it's rotating. But these are some of the things I think we need to try to get creative on. And maybe perhaps we could through this process of listening to our people. I do think it should be a permitted process. I really like the idea of instituting quality standards, fastening standards, and even looking at size limitations possibly. And maybe even also the liability, though this is different, but the liability insurance issue. But if we could explore those options further, I think it would be very helpful.
Councilor Patine, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I'm comfortable revisiting the issue and working on the rest of the sign code update.
I will look for,
I actually have one more question.
Go ahead, Councilor.
I wanted to ask the city attorney, what is the clearance required for bistro tables? Mr. Moeller said 4 feet, and I looked online, not in the code because I couldn't find it. I wanted to look, what does the code say about the sidewalk clearance for bistro tables? I believe I found 6 feet.
I'm looking at staff. I can't honestly say that I know the answer to that. I know that we went through some revisions on the process within the last year. We discussed some ADA requirements in terms of clearances, but I don't have an answer for that question.
The guidelines do require 4 feet clearance, which is consistent with the ADA requirements.
Did that get your answer okay?
That's my answer, although I found, I believe it was the application guidelines when I looked online today and found 6 feet, which I believe is the same requirement we have for newspaper boxes.
And I think there is a difference for if you have a liquor license and you have to put a barrier around your bistro table or not, and that might be the difference there, but I can look into that and make sure that that's clarified.
That would make sense. Because on an ADA, you have to have at least 5 feet inside that barrier.
Okay, then maybe that's it. And I confess I searched unsuccessfully to identify where the code for that provision is, and which was a disappointment. I don't know what keywords I might have used. I tried bistro table and came up empty. So anyway, I think that's an issue that we need to discuss, and also as was mentioned, and other sidewalk obstructions such as Councilor Youssef mentioned. I think there's an overall issue about use of public right-of-way. I will also share a brainstorm that just hit me. We have talked for years about the possibility of reconfiguring Main Avenue with broader sidewalks. And that might go a long way towards alleviating the challenges we're facing here. That's not going to happen in the next month, but I throw the idea out there for that maybe it would gestate somewhere and actually come to fruition.
And I'll make sure that the bistro table guidelines are updated on the website. I'm not sure if that was lost in the update or if there's something been added, so I'll address that as well.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien.
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
Aside from the temporary signs, I want to say this is a huge improvement for those folks that think government's too complicated. And this is a very user-friendly document, the revised sign code in its entirety. And it's made for people that, unlike architects and planners and engineers, developers that live and breathe by the land use development code. That is very complex and intimidating to the average business owner that's trying to open up a shop on Main Avenue or anywhere in our town. And so it's in pretty plain language how I can go in and walk out of City Hall with a sign permit. And that's an improvement because I actually found the former sign code fairly complicated, and you almost need a sign guy to figure it out for you. So that's, I just want to tell staff thank you, and it comes not only with staff, but a lot of community input to get to this point. But it's, if you like streamlining in government, this is an example of what we're trying to do to make life a little easier for business people in our community. So.
I just have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Notwithstanding the sandwich board portion of the sign code, perhaps, just a couple things. One, the temporary sign issue, the most voluminous number of comments that we received were related to that on council that I could count. And we doubled the amount of time that they're allowed in the city. And then, of course, I noticed you reduced the size, and that was sort of the compensation for that. Can we talk a little bit about the doubling the amount of time? Is there any other reason to do that? I'm a bit loath to actually do that at this point, and I'm curious, were businesses would, if that were not in the code, would we have that many businesses out here that really needed that? Is that where you were hearing that? So.
That came through the public process. We kind of looked at a variety of lengths and ways to enforce it, and that's ultimately where we settled on. And I think that's where we got the compromise for reducing the size but increasing the quantity, as we spoke to earlier. But as you mentioned, we did receive comments on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of time. I think the comments, most of them said that means you can have a temporary sign up in your business for half of the year, essentially, which is a substantial increase in the amount of visual clutter that we would have anywhere in town. And I think it's a big change. So I don't know if any of the other counselors have any concerns about that, but that was the one that really struck me in reading the code.
And to clarify, that's for banners.
Right.
Yeah, this would be for banners, increasing it from 1 month maximum to 2 months. Is that
1 week,
1 week
to
2 weeks.
1 week to 2 weeks? Yeah.
So 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On.
And could you give us some examples of banners? I mean, grand opening,
Yeah.
that's normally what I think about a banner.
Grand opening, sales, specials, a special event going on at the store, things like that is typically how they're used. That's a grand opening, sales are the most common.
And I think that's generally for new businesses, or they've changed locations, or it's a new business, a grand opening. They don't really, and I can't recall banners that have been up for long periods of time.
I think, a couple of photos were actually sent in these emails, and they were from businesses where those things are up all the time. I think was there any thought given to maybe increasing the amount of time that they could be up, but a limitation over the course of the year? Was that discussed at all? So that I couldn't really do 6 months, but I could have it up for 2 weeks when it was necessary, because I can understand the idea that I've got a grand opening, or I have some particular back-to-school sale, or whatever it may be that I'm trying to attract business into. But I think the bulk of the concerns that I was reading were concerning the idea that these businesses might just have this up on a rotational basis consistently, and that's probably not the intent of allowing it.
And I think having it structured per month as enforcement is it's easier for us to enforce knowing what's been up in the month versus how much they've used the entire year without creating a full permitting system for that, which we thought might be overkill for temporary banners. So we were trying to find that balance of where we could enforcement, where we could still meet the business's needs, because someone might have a holiday sale for 2 weeks and give them that flexibility. But we did hear the concern that someone was going to keep it up every other 2 weeks for the 6 months, so I understand the hesitation of that as well. But our way of addressing it was it gave flexibility for longer sales or longer grand openings while making it enforceable.
Sure. With the several photo examples that have been provided to us over the past few months, I keep wondering why those people don't make permanent signs. Just go ahead and invest in a good permanent sign. And to Councilor Bertin's suggestion there, we want to get a good permanent sign and advertise these people and keep them in business, not look like we're half in and half out of business all the time. And the examples that have been provided to us are pretty significant signs. They are not back to school signs. They're the primary sign for the business is what it really. So I would like to see that up for further discussion as well.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. We certainly, although we didn't hear it tonight, we certainly had many emails, and with deep divisions about, yes, the 14 days is great, but the, other people are worried about visual clutter, and it certainly was suggested that we limit the total amount of time that a single business could have signs up during the course of the year. It understood that enforcement was likely to be an issue if we do it that way. But I was wondering if the possibility would exist of simply having a registration process where someone who wants to put up a temporary sign comes in, says, I'm going to put up a temporary sign for these 2 weeks, and say maybe they can do that 3 times a year, but you've got a record without having to go out, other than make sure they actually take it down, counting how long has this been up. I think that was certainly an issue where I was trying to think about, what's a compromise position that would perhaps satisfy everyone, and that certainly occurred to me as an option.
It does seem like a real simple way of enforcement. Anything that's not on your list is an illegal installation of a banner, and that way you can track it for 2 weeks. You can go out and have a howdy doody or whatever kind of conversation without citing those individuals for some calculus that you figured out.
Yep, I think we can do research into communities that have tried registration systems and see what we can learn from them and if it can be effective here.
Would you say that a little bit louder, please?
We can do some research in communities that have tried registration systems and see what's been effective and if it can be applied here. Come up with some suggestions for you all.
So it sounds like a couple of city councilors would like to revisit the banners, and as well as the sandwich boards, okay, and look at some compromises to make sure our businesses in Durango stay sustainable, as well as look at guidelines and making sure that that, as Mr. Miller pointed out, he spent $750. I know another owner of downtown who's spending $1,000 for a sign. So these are not inexpensive modes of advertising. They are costly, they take time, and we would like to revisit this issue. I'm looking for a motion from...
I still have additional questions.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
I said earlier I have additional questions.
Okay.
One of the questions I had was concerned the choice of 30 days for 30 days around an election. I believe current code allows signs for 60 days.
I had the same question.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's fair.
And let's see, I think that was the one other issue that has come up that other people haven't also addressed.
We could increase it to 60 days if you felt that was appropriate. 30 days is initially what we thought aligned with the election season, but...
Is it currently 60?
What?
Is it currently 60?
I don't believe so. I believe it's 30 days before the mail-in ballots. If the mail-in ballots begin March the 16th, then you can put, it's the mail-in ballots. And so it's 30 days when the mail-in ballot, before the mail-in ballot. So February the 16th, political signs could go up, and they would stay until April the 2nd. And then generally,
3 days.
they are asked to come down within about 3 days in the city. And that's been the political science forever and ever.
So, but based on what you said earlier, just for my clarification, if I was a homeowner, I could have 2 signs up in advance of that 30 days, right? It's just the requirement to allow for up to 8 political signs. That's the 30-day limitation.
Year round, you could have up to 12 square feet, which is about 2
Right.
political
So like if right now, if there was a candidate, I see one out in the audience, if there was a candidate that had a sign, just 1 sign up in my yard, and that would be okay, based on the current rules.
Yeah.
So this 30-day limitation is just for the real push.
The real push.
Okay, I get it. That was my question.
And actually, as I reconsider that, I'm okay with that too. I think the current system's working well because really it's about 6 weeks to the election from the day they can put it. So I think it works well.
Okay.
I'm fair. Good enough.
Any more questions?
No, that's it.
Okay. I think we're at a point where I'm looking for a motion from a counselor.
Do we have, does the code as stated address the issue with banners? Or would that have to be an amendment after we approve this?
Try and summarize what we heard, but you would give us the direction to look into a permitting or management program for A-frames in the right-of-way, and then looking at a registration process governing the banner signs less than 6 months out of the year, with a little more control over monitoring when banners are up. So that could be a total amount of time or a couple periods of time that banners could be up. But I think still you can adopt what's in the code tonight, and we can bring those back as amendments to you after having those discussions and doing some more research, if you're comfortable with that.
And I would like to also see you to talk to the businesses that have banners and make sure that you get impact statements from them.
Yeah.
Not just, I don't like the banner on that liquor store. So I think that's very
I think
important.
Councilor White's suggestion was something we kicked around quite a bit about, even an online registration. It's a really simple form to fill out, and then we have a database to track those. So I think we had a similar concept, so we appreciate the feedback, and we'll look into that more.
And on your sandwich boards, I'm very concerned about businesses that are on the second floor, as well as businesses on side streets.
Yeah.
So I would like to see the sandwich boards address those businesses' concerns, which we received emails on. So I think you've got a direction.
Yep.
I'm looking for a motion.
All right, I think we can finally do it.
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the Land Use and Development Code text amendments to update the sign code and direct the city attorney to prepare the enacting ordinances.
I'll second.
And roll call, please.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef? Yes. Mayor Marbury?
Yes. Moving on, staff has direction. We are going into a quasi-judicial hearing, 8.2.1, a public hearing. And I want to thank everybody who came tonight, every business owner. Your voice was heard. And the staff will regroup, and you should be getting information from the staff. All right. Thank you all for taking your time. 8.2.1, a public hearing to consider the Cactus Rock condominium plat vacation. Thank you, sir. We'll give them just a second to...
I might say I'm going to recuse myself.
Yes, sir.
I think my name's on that plat.
All right, thank you very much.
I used to be the other half of that plat, so
Okay,
I'll
thank
just
you. Step out.
finish my coffee. Thank you.
That sounds great. And would you close those doors on your way out, Councilor Bricky? Thank you. And we'll look for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Marbury and Council. This is a public hearing to consider a request from Ted and Jill Wright for the owners of units A and B of the Cactus Rock condominiums, which is a 2-unit condominium project located at 2701 and 2703 West 2nd Avenue. The Wrights are seeking to vacate the previously approved and recorded condominium plat and the associated condominium documents. The intent of this action is to vacate the separate ownership of the individual units and return the property to a single parcel containing the 2-unit residential duplex. This plat vacation will not change the residential use of the property and will only eliminate the future potential for each of the residential units to be individually owned and operated. We're reviewing this as a plat amendment. We're bringing it forward as a minor subdivision, which requires review by the Planning Commission and City Council. Assuming the approval is given to vacate the plat, then a formal document vacating the plat and the associated documents will be recorded with the city clerk. Mr. Wright has provided a draft document vacating the interest in the property, which has been reviewed by the city attorney and accepted by the city attorney. Planning Commission heard this item at their January 28th meeting. There was no public comment. Planning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the proposed plat vacation, subject to findings and conditions stated in the staff report. There's no fiscal impact associated with this action. The continued residential use of the property is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the zoning of the property. And it's the recommendation of the Planning Commission that the council by motion approve the Cactus Rock condominium plat vacation subject to the findings and conditions of the Planning Commission as reflected in the staff report and minutes of their meeting of January 28th, 2019.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to open the public hearing. I don't think anyone signed up, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And I will go to questions from City Council. Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Cactus Rock condominium plat vacation, subject to the findings and conditions of the Planning Commission as reflected in the staff report and minutes of their meeting of January 28th, 2019.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And would someone go find Councilor Bricky? Moving into...
Want to be done with this call?
Yeah, he's not finished. Thank you, Mr. Wright. You know him. All right, I trust you to go. There he is. 8.2.2, a public hearing to consider a request from GRVP LLC for a preliminary plan plat for Lot 62 of Three Springs Village, filing number 4. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Scott Shine with Community Development. We have what we believe to be a relatively straightforward subdivision request from GRVP LLC, the developers of Three Springs, to turn an existing lot into 18 single-family home lots, sort of in the northwest corner of Three Springs Village 1. You can see the property here. Like I said, north of the hospital. It's a part of the recently platted Village 1 filing 4 area of Three Springs, which took on a little bit of a different character for Three Springs. It's more of a standard front-loaded single-family lot, primarily because of the topography up there and the challenges with grades. They designed around the topography to fit these lots in. They're doing a similar process with this lot 62. This is the Three Springs preliminary plan map. It shows lot 62 designated as medium density residential. This is an aerial, and then like I said, it does have some topography on the site. These are the contour lines. And then this is the layout that's being proposed. It's a little bit of a holdover lot. The developer was originally hoping to do something like senior living or more of a multifamily style of development up there. That hasn't come to fruition, and they are seeing a lot of interest in these other front-loaded single-family lots, and so they're proposing to create 18 more of those. The blue sort of polka dot pattern are new trail corridors, which will be managed by the Metro District out there in Three Springs. And we felt like those were very important with the street not going through and connecting. We felt like it was important to have those pedestrian connections. some single track, some sort of crushed gravel, areas for people to walk their dogs and connect. The area on the north is referred to as the East-West Park, and that will eventually be a linear park that goes east-west through the Three Springs development and will serve as a sort of a primary corridor for the development. So these residents will have the opportunity to connect to that linear park. This is the plat that's before you tonight, and then one unique thing that they've done on the plat is add building envelopes to the properties on the east side of the cul-de-sac, and that's because the trail corridor takes up a little bit of the lot space and therefore reduces the rear setback. So these lots wouldn't be able to meet the standard rear setback, and so instead of having every lot go through a rear setback variance, the building envelopes are on the plat. It allows them to go a little bit closer than is typical. In the rear yard, it'll still function a lot like open space. It'll be sort of a multi-purpose drainage and trail corridor, so it'll still appear like a rear yard space, but that's why those building envelopes are on the plat that's before you. These are the review criteria for the preliminary plan. We've noticed the public and surrounding landowners, and we've not received any public comments up to this point. And at the January 28th meeting, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this plat. I believe the applicants are here if you have questions for them.
Certainly. I'd like to open the public testimony. I can't tell, City Manager, I don't think anyone signed up.
No.
Can you tell us? Nope. Okay, I have closed the public testimony. And are there any questions from City Council?
Just look at the context map, and you know the dedication of on the north property to become part of that east-west trail system doesn't seem to continue into the next adjacent loop there. That I mean that line. I mean, yeah, it goes up above, goes further north. So I'm just wondering what the timing and what that corridor is actually going to turn into. Right there where the all that electrical stuff is, and
yeah. So right now it does have sort of a service road to that substation, and then you can see here in the preliminary plan it's designated as a neighborhood park. Those two. These areas, and then this would be the future community park. That's what I'm referring to as the linear park to connect people across the subdivision.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So yeah, so the substation stays there, and so that little corner kind of wags up to the right, to the north and east, and kind of reaches out and provides access to that.
Yeah, it's connected in here. It's tight to get around the substation, but there's the connection there.
So there's a benefit. I mean, it's beneficial. It's not, it ties into something, so.
That's the idea, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Would the applicant like to say anything? All righty.
Good evening. My name is John Penny, and my address is 65 Mercado Street, Suite 250, Durango, Colorado. And I'm the development manager of GRPP LLC, who's the applicant here in this Lot 62 project. And yeah, Scott covered a lot of details, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's kind of business as usual for us. 18 more single-family lots, and very similar to the lots we developed last year, creating the new Saltbrush Street, the 44 lots off of that. And so it's just kind of adding more lots to our inventory into the Durango market. So we're here for questions. If you got any more questions for us, we're be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's any more questions from council. And if there are no other questions, I'd like to look for a motion.
Trying to get to it.
They're all trying to find it.
I got one.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the request from GRVP LLC for a preliminary plan / plat for Lot 62 of Three Springs Village 1, filing 4, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat prior to recordation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Brookie?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. Moving on to an introduction of ordinances, 10.1 is an ordinance amending the provisions of Article 4 of Chapter 17 and Article 3 of Chapter 18 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango related to the regulation of the use of city-owned or managed property for the purposes of camping. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, this is ordinance 2019-7. This is following on the a motion at the last meeting to prepare the ordinance. It follows very closely the proposal that was made in the agenda document that the council reviewed. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from council? I'll look for a motion.
Move we approve ordinance 2019-7.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. This is our time for reports from council, and so I'll look for any councilors to
I'm going to pass, thank you.
pass. Counselor Brookie?
I was happy to report that the CAST, Colorado Association of Ski Town meeting, our annual legislative meeting in March, the keynote speaker will be Governor Jared Polis for lunch with the governor. And so I'm happy to represent the city in attendance at that meeting.
Thank you. And Counselor White?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I continue my office hours Thursday mornings at 11:30, but I will be unavailable on March 7th. There are 2 events coming up that are worth noting. First of all, there was scheduled for tomorrow night a neighborhood meeting about ADUs to be held at the library. That has been postponed until March 13th. Same time, same place. It is said to be friendly, family friendly with snacks. And also next week, Thursday, the Chamber of Commerce is hosting their Eggs and Issues concerning the city council election. That's 8 o'clock at the Doubletree, and it's not free.
Thank you. City Manager, I'd like to call on you for an update on our sales tax and lodgers.
Thank you, Mayor Marbury. So I'm giving the January monthly sales tax report. This would be for sales that occurred in December and were reported in January. So sales tax was down month over month, 0.3%. And the lodger's tax was up 6.7%.
Thank you very much. Also, City Manager, I asked you to give us kind of an update on snow removal.
Well, the good news is we've had some snow, and the benefits of snow reduce fire danger in the summer and also provide the water that we need as a community throughout the year. It also requires a pretty good effort by staff in the street division primarily, and also Parks and Rec, to clear the snow. We are likely to exhaust the line item for snow hauling, and I suspect we'll be coming back to the City Council for a supplemental appropriation to address that. I think everyone, unless you tell me differently, is we have to maintain public safety and keep the roads open and the sidewalks safe and so forth, and the trail functioning. So that is going to cost us more than we had budgeted for. This coming weekend, if all of our snow reports are accurate, We will be removing snow from the downtown probably on Sunday. And if you've been in the downtown area, you will notice the middle of the street has become some snow storage. We're also trying to coordinate a way to remove snow around the parking meters and along the sidewalks. And I have great confidence in the staff that we'll be able to pull all that together and do it on Sunday. It's a 2-night effort, so we'll do as much as we can on Sunday and come back on Monday to do the remaining snow hauling. And the site that we purchased in the tech center is working great. We are no longer using Cundiff Park, so that's all working according to plan. We run 2 shifts. We have 14 vehicles at our disposal, and right now we run 2 12-hour shifts, 7 vehicles each, and we can adjust that according to the weather needs.
And would you give us a mileage of how many miles the city of Durango actually is in charge of? It was over the 90s is what I remember.
I think it's, this is testing me, I think it's 83 miles.
83 miles.
But don't quote me on that, because that's a
I gave you a trick question.
stump to chump. I think it's 83.
And so with those 83 miles, it takes time for those miracle workers is what I call them, those snowplow drivers. And City Manager, please tell all of the street department that I really salute them. I have been up at 1 o'clock in the morning and watched them come by at 3 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep. And so I know what kind of jobs those guys are doing. Then I see another crew during the day. So they are working hard. And for those of us that have been here for four decades, I've seen it a lot higher in Durango, and I'm happy every time it snows. And so thank them all for their hard work. I'd like to remind people that the library is having a library sale on March the 14th and 15th, the Friends of the Library, and drop in, find some good books, and that helps support the library itself. Also, on March the 19th, I'm inviting all veterans to come to City Council. We will be honoring a man called Larry Valdez from Durango. He's a Durango high school graduate. He was a Vietnam veteran. He earned the Silver Star, and we are renaming a road for him called Larry Valdez Drive. There will be veterans here, and if you haven't gotten the message yet, it's 6:30, March the 19th at City Council. I believe when you honor one veteran, you honor all veterans in Durango. And the city manager's sales tax, I'm just going to give you a short pitch for 1A, because we have faced a roller coaster ride of sales tax, and that is how we pay for streets, correct, city manager?
That's correct.
It's not an enterprise fund. It doesn't pay for itself. And so when the roller coaster ride happens, then budgets have to be adjusted. All departments cut budgets twice during the last 6 months to adjust for the 416 fire that went from June, July, August, and September. We saw a change in sales tax in October and November, and now it's back to below 0 for December. It's really hard to make plans, but the department's heads have slashed their budgets to keep a balanced budget. So I'm going to invite you to look at the roads that need construction, and there's a list of them online, as well as understanding that 1A is our opportunity to pass strictly for streets, curbs, gutters, alleys, sidewalks, construction, operation, and maintenance of city streets. And with that, it means we listen to the residents. They said 1 ballot question, keep the time short, it's 10 years. Tell us exactly, strictly for streets. There's a whole list of streets that have failed and need reconstruction. In fact, there's 56 pages that the Durango Herald published a while back called the paving, help me out.
Condition index.
Paving index. So it shows you every street where you live and what the suggestions for maintaining.
I would add that the ballot issue includes review by an advisory committee, and I believe we've got a study session scheduled next month where the council will discuss the function of a finance committee, which might be broader than this specific mandate that would be established if the ballot issue passes. But I mean, that was also one of the things that we heard from citizens, and we're responding to that as well.
The sales tax proposed would be 0.5% for 10 years and with a sunset. Bayfield passed a sales tax of 1% to pay for their street maintenance, and our neighbors in Farmington also passed a sales tax to pay for their street maintenance. This is not unique to Durango, but we are looking for support. And so if you have questions, please contact any city councilor. And there's also a group of citizens that are encouraging you to get out to the vote for 1A. With that, we have one more motion on our books. Let me find it. We are 11.1 is discussion and possible action concerning a motion to convene an executive session to determine matters relating to potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property excuse me, within the city of Durango as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024A. I'll look for a motion.
I move that we go into an executive session to discuss matters relating to potential purchases, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property within the city of Durango as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024A.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Berkey?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes, and this concludes the Durango City Council. We'll see you on March the 5th. Thank you.